what we really connect on is the idea of living beyond your circumstances, no matter what they are, whether it's rare disease or financial troubles or where you were born or whatever it is.
Just because I'm losing this ability or that ability, I still have other things left that allow me to still do some pretty badass things.
Yeah, so it seemed like Sean looked up to Kyle, but like Kyle, how did you handle it for yourself? Because I'm sure when you were growing up, there wasn't Facebook, so you couldn't hit up baby Sean, or
in other words, he's calling you old.
More and more, especially as I get older and I recognize the vanity that I have just because I'm human. The more I try to see people as people, and I
yeah, like how did it feel to you go from being physically able to do everything you wanted, I'm assuming, and then now to enter like the disabled world? It's like a totally different shift and the way you talk to people and people talk to you.
All right, there's this challenge that has been placed in front of me, and at some level I perceive that other people don't think that it's possible that I could do this thing, and in my head I'm like, oh yeah, watch this. And I think that's part of what motivates me, like I said, especially when I was younger.
That grit, if it wasn't for my disease, would I be as motivated, if you will, or would I be a little more go with the wind, whatever comes my way?
So I guess the point is that a lot of it is in our heads. And when you say Simone Biles or Michael Phelps, they're the ones who have trained their mind to be like, I'm going for that gold. And I'm not, okay, fine if I'm a finalist, but that I'm going to go for that gold,
Yeah. We're 300 or 400 miles into the race, but we haven't even crossed the first state line. And I think that's when it started to set in for a couple of us. Like, what the hell did we get ourselves into? I think I found this sense of encouragement in that, even without people saying it like you just did, because I recognize that there are things I've done that many able-bodied people wouldn't even think about doing. So there's even that, to me, is motivating, saying, it encourages me to keep waking up. And
hello, welcome to my podcast, two mics. Well, today, three mics, still one Joe Sooch. The world couldn't live with another Joe Sooch. I am Joe Sooch, and I'll be giving a mic to Kyle and Sean. They are both diagnosed with Friedreich's ataxia. FA affects their balance and coordination, significantly limiting their physical abilities. We'll get into a lot more details in a bit. They have their own podcast called Two Disabled Do. So go check them out after this chat. How are you guys today?
Fantastic.
Doing good. Happy to be talking to you.
I'm glad guys are here. It took you a long time to be here.
You're running a tight ship, Joey.
Yeah, so I know you guys have a successful podcast and I used to be in interviews. So today you guys can sit back and relax.
All right. Thank you.
Sweet.
Yeah, so just for the audience to know, they are both athletes that really love to push themselves to the absolute limits and really love bikes. Kyle cannot walk, so he uses a wheelchair to get around and uses a trike to complete his races. A trike is a bike with 3 wheels, so you are almost lying down when on it. I didn't forget you, Sean. We got Sean, who founded Determinant to help raise money for disability people. Any disability person knows that money is often the main reason for our barriers for independence. Also write for the Friedreich's Ataxia news website. They both starred in the Ataxian Documentary to help raise a shitload of money. We're talking $6 million in 2007. In the Ataxian, they completed a 9-day nonstop race over 3,000 miles, which sounds super easy. If a disability person could do it, anybody could do it, right?
Totally.
That's right.
So I think a great start would be, how did you guys meet and actually start working together? Because it seems you guys are brother brothers with so much in common?
That's a good question. I'll start this one since I'm the one that hunted Kyle down. I was diagnosed with FA when I was 25, and I live in the Sacramento area of California. And of course, being diagnosed with the rare disease, never heard of it, didn't know anything about it or anybody
How rare are we talking about?
in that space. 1 in 15,000, or no, about 15,000, 50. What is the prevalence? So
one
it's
in
15.
50,000. Yeah.
But how many
But
people
how many
in the world-
diagnosed people across the globe? And is it like 15,000 known cases?
Yeah, about 5,000 in the US and about 15,000 worldwide.
Oh, so you outnumber my disease by a lot, 800 to 15,000. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, yours is pretty ultra rare, it seems.
Mhm.
Anyway, after I was diagnosed, of course, I went to the internet, got on Google, and found Kyle's name in some headlines for some recent badass stuff he did living with FA. So I realized he lived in the same city. We were same age. So I think I found him on Facebook or something. I was like, yo.
Wait, are you saying that you diagnosed yourself first?
No. I had a doctor, diagnose me
Oh.
with FA. And then from there, I found Kyle
Okay.
on the internet and sent him a message saying, you obviously know a little bit more about this condition than me. You're my new best friend. What am I up against? And Kyle agreed to meet me for a beer and some pizza. And one thing led to another. In fact, I think it was our second conversation, our second time meeting up, where we committed to participate in a ride together and raise some money and just do whatever we could to work together to make an impact. And we've been friends ever since.
Yep. And Joey, you mentioned the Ataxian movie, and we participated in Race Across America in 2007. I'd been riding my trike for we participated in Race Across America in 2010. I had been riding my trike for a few years, and Sean just got a bike specifically for this race, and we trained up, and we had a documentary crew with us, and they shot an amazing documentary. And I feel like I can say that because I didn't actually make the film. We were just in it. So everyone can check that out, the Ataxia movie, and we'll send you a link for that. But in 2016, I think, is when we started the podcast, Two Disabled Dudes podcast. And Sean and I, we both have FA, obviously, Friedreich's ataxia, but what we really connect on is the idea of living beyond your circumstances, no matter what they are, whether it's rare disease or financial troubles or where you were born or whatever it is, living beyond those circumstances and getting the most out of life that you can. And Joe, I know that you have a similar approach to life as well.
Yeah, but it's all about you guys today. So I want to say sorry. So I mentioned that Kyle had a trike because he's unable to go on a bike. So are we saying that Sean can ride a normal bike?
Well, I used to. So in the film, that was recorded or filmed in 2010. So it's been a minute. Since then, I have transitioned into a trike, and I did that probably 5 years ago or so. So we could tell even when we did RAM or Race Across America, our drivers would drive behind me until I was all over the road, so I couldn't ride in a straight line very well. So they kind of saw the writing on the wall, and it only took about 5 years or so before there was a realization that it was unsafe to me to ride an upright, quote unquote, normal bike on open roads.
Yeah, I think Sean he traveled about twice the distance that the rest of us did in the race because he was just weaving across the road the whole time. So,
you know, I
But
gotta
so-
say, just to give him some credit, the brand of bike I ride is Catrack, and the general manager, one of the owners, I think he really helped me make that transition. Because what I had done is on my upright bike, I had fallen a few times and fractured little finger bones, and it just kind of got to a point where the bike scared me. And so I kind of sat on the bench for a while and quit riding and just stood on the sidelines cheering people on. And he called one day and said, look, we got to help you get back on the road. So, we're gonna outfit you with the bike. And it's an awesome machine. And once they kind of helped me make that transition, of course, now I ride and participate when I can.
Well, how did you feel? Because we all have progressive diseases. So how did it feel that you have to kind of lower your, I can't think of the word, but lower your, change the way that you can be able to do things?
Yeah, hard question to answer. I think with the diagnosis, when or the writing is on the wall, it's going to get worse. There's some mental preparation in that. So I can't say it's ever surprising. In fact, just this past year, I started using a walker out in public. And even though there's some level of, I don't know, embarrassment that comes with that kind of thing.
Of course, yeah.
There's ultimately this understanding or this knowledge that it was coming, and I'm still doing pretty good for my condition and my age. And I think I'm just proud to still be able to do what I can do. For me, there's always been a sense of, just because I'm losing this ability or that ability, I still have other things left that allow me to still do some pretty badass things.
So are we kind of saying that Kyle is kind of like the role model to you in a way? Okay, he seems to be
definitely not
more progressed.
No,
following the footsteps.
no, he is not. No, in a sense, he is, because he's been there. He's done all this. In fact, when I first met Kyle, I want to say he was walking a little bit on his own. I can picture him getting into his truck and hanging on and still walking around. So I know he's familiar with some of the transitions that I'm going through or have been through and will go through. So him and a few other friends are people I know that I can lean on for a sense of encouragement, or they'll even give me crap, help make me laugh about it, and even tell me things that I would never think about. Like one instance I remember Kyle telling me a couple of years ago, because when he flies, he needs to utilize an aisle chair to get on and off the plane. So just getting up in the mid-flight to go use the restroom, that's not easy. That's not normal. It's not, you can't just decide to do that. So I asked him about how to manage that, and he just says, I think ahead when I'm getting on a flight. I just don't drink a whole lot before I get on. And that sort of advice or input helps me think through my own struggles or my own preparation for a flight. Do I really want to have a coffee, or should I not, just given the challenges that I'll face even on?
Yeah, so it seemed like Sean looked up to Kyle, but like, Kyle, how did you handle it for yourself? Because I'm sure when you were growing up, there wasn't Facebook, so you couldn't hit up baby Sean, or
in other words, he's calling you old.
Yeah, I know. You're right though. There was no Facebook. I think I used MySpace for a little bit in college, but so I think this is the most powerful thing about community, because Sean will tell you that I am not the only one that he's learned things from, right? Now, I mean, we learn things from so many other people that have FA, and even they don't have FA, they have disabilities. We're learning from you today just by the way you approach life, and I think that if we're open to it, we can learn things from anyone, right? That can help us in our lives. And obviously the most potent examples come from your community, because it's a very unique set of things that you have to learn how to live with. But I think it applies to everyone in our whole lives.
Do you guys hang out with more disability people, or do you hang out with more normal folks?
I hang out with both.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really value my time with both, and I, more and more, especially as I get older and I recognize the vanity that I have just because I'm human. The more I try to see people as people, and I don't want that to sound like I'm up on some ivory tower, because it's certainly not the way it works in my head most of the time. But I try to recognize that and hang out with my friends, not a disabled person or an able-bodied person.
I'd
Yeah,
say a little bit of both. Yeah, sorry. There's, I work around a bunch of able-bodied people, so I suppose I'm around able-bodied people more than disabled, but I hang out with both as well and love connecting. I do find it easier to meet and connect with new people that are disabled than people that are able-bodied. Like, I have no problem walking up to somebody in a wheelchair or, with some physical or outward disability. I have no problem introducing myself and striking up conversation. But when you're talking fully abled or what appears to be fully abled, I'm like, I don't know, I'm nervous or I feel inferior or, I have a hard time striking up conversation with them sometimes.
Yeah, like how did it feel to you go from being physically able to do everything you wanted, I'm assuming, and then now to enter like the disabled world? It's like a totally different shift and the way you talk to people and people talk to you.
I'd say for me, it's been frustrating on some degree. Although I've never pitied myself. I've never played the victim. Like, that's just mentality that does not work well for me and has no space. But there are certainly things where, I'll fall in a silly moment or what I believe to be a ridiculous moment, or I have a hard time getting the key in the door because of, my inability to keep my arm still, or my riding is ugly these days, where it used to be, in my opinion, really cool when I was younger. Those little things do frustrate me. But I don't know. I've never been upset at the world because I'm losing certain ability.
How do you feel, Kyle?
I think about a similar mindset. I think one interesting thing that I think about is that I didn't know anything about Friedreich's ataxia until I was about 16. I was diagnosed at 17, but I lived a completely normal or a completely able-bodied life until I was 16. And I think I developed a lot of ableist views because I had the ability when I was younger during my formative years, right? And so I recognize a lot of that manifesting in my life as a little bit like I'm hard on myself a lot, or I'm, we can call it self-hatred. I think that's a little harsh for what I'm talking about, but just my self-image, I think, is different because I grew up as an able-bodied person and now I'm disabled, or now I live with a disability.
Yeah, it is a very weird shift to it's almost entering a world with a different set of eyes. And like you can explain it to every person, but they would never fully understand unless Ashley goes through the whole transition. And then also like all our diseases are progressively getting worse. So you kind of see in baby steps of how the world treats you a little bit differently. So like if you're walking differently, that's one thing, but then you enter a wheelchair, that that changes things a lot from how people talk to you. Do they even talk to you? I'm sure you had a lot of situations where they just cough you off for pretty much no reason. And like if you look at your resume online, like you guys are go-getters. You are highly motivated. Like Sean said that he used to have a bike and like he retired, I guess. But then he went on a trek and it's like, oh, so now I can still do the same activity, but have to do things a little bit differently. What I find is that it's hard to find motivation in a lot of people, both disability and able-bodied people. It's obviously a lot harder for disability people because sometimes they don't know that. So like I have a feeling like if Sean didn't know who Kyle was, Sean might have never found a trike. So he would have just hung up his bike or whatever you do with a bike and then just I don't know, just not ride a bike again and say like, I would take a ride a bike, and he'll watch a video of himself riding a bike and be like all sad about it. But now he had this, I think I read an article that he had this newfound life for being outdoorsy again. It just takes a lot of motivation for especially a disabled person to not only find a solution, but also be different from society because most of us are living with able-bodied people most of the time. So we're always pushing ourselves to go the extra mile, even though we're kind of doing the same things.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's always, in fact, to that message, I almost find some motivation and encouragement, if you will, maybe inspiration. Able-bodied people just as much as I would somebody like Kyle or any other of our friends, because even able-bodied people get diagnosed with cancer or some life-changing issue, and they continue being great parents or being awesome in their own right. And I find a lot of inspiration from those kinds of situations where people live their whole life and something comes out of the blue, but they still choose to keep living or keep making the most of what they've been given.
Yeah, I think we can all agree that we're all highly motivated people. And I'll say this, that a disability person create a lot of barriers, but if you're able to overcome that more, that takes a whole lot of motivation that I think it goes beyond what an able-bodied person could do.
I think especially when I was younger, maybe a little less now, but I think we could probably all three of us agree with this, is that like, all right, there's this challenge that has been placed in front of me, and at some level, I perceive that other people don't think that it's possible that I could do this thing. And in my head, I'm like, oh yeah, watch this. And I think that's part of what motivates me. Like I said, especially when I was younger.
Yeah, you have that mentality of like, I can do it and I'm gonna prove it to you guys. Like you can't put me down just because you see me this way.
There is a part of me that wonders if I would possess that grit if it wasn't for my disease, would I be as motivated, if you will, or would I be a little more go with the wind, whatever comes my.
So are you saying that you kind of have like a kick and a butt to push yourself more?
I think so. I feel like it's, although I don't know, I do feel like it's been something that helped propel me in the direction that we're living in today.
Part of what I hear you saying is, a little bit of gratitude for your challenges, for your disease, which is a tough thing to say because we all know how terrible it is, partly for us, but also for our community. And, to be grateful for it at some level is a tough thing, but I think that's part of it.
I want to say that I think having a disability creates a lower threshold of happiness in a way, because like let's use the race that you guys did. So the 3,000 mile race nonstop. And so I feel like if you're a physically able-bodied person and you do it, that's great. So let's say their happiness is from like a 5, right? And then they win the race. Well, you don't win the race, but you completed the race. Now you're like an 8. But like when you're a disability person, you have all the people saying you can't do this, or maybe you have your self-doubt that I don't know if I'm physically able to do it. And then you do it. So now your happiness goes from a 2 to an 8 to like, I think at the end of the day, you feel even more accomplished because you have so much negativity towards you versus a physically able-bodied person that they'll just complete the race and be like, oh, wow, that was awesome. Like, what's that? Yeah. But like for you guys, you have all the negativity against you from people around you, maybe yourself, even you have doubt about yourself, and then you did it. It's like a huge accomplishment. Mm-hmm. So maybe we're kind of chasing the high that a physically able-bodied person was never able to achieve.
That's while you're explaining that, I'm thinking of, a gold medalist, think Michael Phelps or Simone Biles, right? Like they're hungry, or at one point they're hungry for the gold medal. And I think I'd be happy just to place, I'd be happy with bronze, or even I'd be happy with being a finalist, if you will, So you bring up a good point.
Yeah, I just think that we have our accomplishment seems more because we have lost so much that like in a sea of failure, when we have an accomplishment, it shows up more versus an able-bodied person that have a lot more accomplishment. So it doesn't seem as big to them as it was for you guys.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is perception too. Like, especially when I was young, I perceived all the naysayers. I'm not sure they were really there, but in my head, I was overcoming, like you said, a bigger barrier because I perceived all the negativity, right? That wasn't even really there. But, so I guess the point is that a lot of it is in our heads. And when you say Simone Biles or, Michael Phelps, they're the ones who have trained their mind to be like, I'm going for that gold. And I'm not, okay, fine if I'm a finalist, but that I'm going to go for that gold,
Yeah. So let's talk about the race. So it's a 3,000 mile race. I have here, you go from San Diego, California to Annapolis, Maryland, and you completed it in 8 days, 8 hours and 14 minutes. So like, how do you guys even like approach this?
A lot of it was that I knew people who'd done it before. And so, it was just learning from them how to figure out how to do it. Obviously, there's another level of challenge because there's disability involved, but a lot of it was just knowing how people have done it before. Like, for example, we have a 4-man team, and you don't just like relay every hour. Each person goes an hour, and then you just keep going. Our scheme was oh, that's right. So our scheme was we split into sub teams of 2, and for 4 hours that sub team would be on the road, and those 2 people would be switching off every half an hour. And then at the end of the 4 hours, the sub teams would switch. So, a few details there, but the point is, like, we would have never known that unless we were talking to people who'd done it before. And so, a lot of it was just learning from others.
Yeah, and there are a couple of different strategies, but we never even would have learned one strategy without first committing to the race. One thing that has been challenging or has been speaking to me personally lately is this idea that you'll never figure it out, or you'll never find the best route or find a good route if you don't just start moving, right? So I think I look back on that race and that event, we had to commit first before we actually held ourselves to the fire of how are we going to do it? What's this going to look like? And once we were committed, there was this drive to figure out the best way to do it because we were doing it either way.
What was the most stressful for you guys? Was it more that you were afraid that you weren't able to do it due to your disabilities, or was it more like a planning thing? Like, what was the most stressful part about it?
For me, it was planning. I mean, it was a huge logistical feat to figure out how all this stuff was going to work together. We had 4 teammates. We had a 13-person crew. We had 3 vehicles, people coming from all over the country, flights and whatever. And then at the end, everyone's got to get back. And I don't know. And a rule book as thick as you could imagine. And we had to figure out all these rules and put them into use before we even started the race. But, when Sean was talking about committing and sort of the idea that once we commit, we have to do it. And anyway, there was so much preparation leading up to the start. And the start was a very defined time, right? Like it was a day and a time that we had to start. And I think that if there was never a defined day or time, we would still be prepared. Yeah. And so, that just relates to so many situations in my life where I'm like, all right, I got to give myself a deadline or it's just never going to get done.
I'm just like trying to think of the logistics, and you said there were 13 people. So basically someone had to drive all day and all night, obviously shifting and one sleeping and such, right? Like,
yeah, we had a small RV, and so we needed 2 drivers that could handle that. We had 2 minivans that were basically the crew vehicle for whoever was cycling in the moment. And of course, because we rotated 2 cyclists at a time, there were 2 vans, one for each of us. We had a gopher, what we called a gopher vehicle. That was 2 people that would drive ahead and make sure we, go to the grocery store to refill the RV with food or do some laundry for us. They would just kind of run the errands, because the RV and the minivans, they couldn't leave the race route, really.
Wait, so you're saying that this car will like travel fast to do whatever you need to do and then find you and like go over the speed limit to find you guys?
Well, they actually didn't need to go over the speed limit, because remember, we're just on bicycles, so we're averaging 14 to 18 miles per hour. So they could drive ahead 60 miles and do a errand and meet us back before the shift was over. They were able to easily stay with us, or
It's just crazy that you're at like 9, what was it, 9, what was 8 days? That's just so much. Like, were you even able to enjoy it at all, or was it more like get this over with by mile 2?
No, that's funny. I think that at one point we were still in California. We're 300 or 400 miles into the race, but we haven't even crossed the first state line. And I think that's when it started to set in for a couple of us. Like, what the hell did we get ourselves into? And then, come Midway, Colorado, or wherever, it was like, all right, we're halfway there, we can do it, let's get it over with, because my butt hurts, or my muscles are getting tired.
Yeah, and I mean, I didn't even, none of us really knew where we were within the country
Ever.
at any moment. We were just like, all right, keep spinning the cranks, because it was literally nonstop, like you said, 8 days. So I mean, we were pedaling and traveling 24 hours a day for that 8 days.
So how do you like guide know where to go then? Do you just say their car in front of you guiding you, or how do you?
So our follow vehicle had a sound system where they could talk to us through the car. So they would be like, all right, turn right, so yeah.
Yeah, too bad they were in like AirPods back then. And
Yeah, I think about if we were to do it today, we'd be a lot more sophisticated.
Yeah.
Well, I know Sean said that he was on a bike during that time, and then Kyle, you were in a trike. Would you say a trike is easier or more work for you?
Well, so a trike, like my trike weighs 32 pounds, and an upright bike weighs 18, 19 pounds, and so that uphill, there's a big disadvantage, partly because of the weight, but partly you can't get up over your pedals and shift your weight to pedal up the hill. And so it's all on your legs. Downhill, there's a little bit of an aerodynamic advantage. So you make up a little bit for it in the downhill, but I'd say overall, I think an upright bike might have a little advantage as far as efficiency.
So you're saying that along with its ability being a challenge, you also had a challenge of your actual bike too.
Yeah, and I mean, I've never really seen it like that, because if I didn't have a trike, I literally wouldn't be able to ride at all. And so I see it as an advantage to not riding at all. So,
well, how do you feel, Sean? Since you went from bike to trike, do you feel, I guess, the challenges
was definitely different. On a trike, you're constantly working against gravity, right? Because of the way you're positioned, you're parallel with the ground. So there's never an advantage. Like Kyle said, when you're going uphill, somebody on an upright bike can sort of position themselves and put their whole weight on the pedal or on the crank. So you have sort of an advantage to push against or push with gravity. Whereas on a trike, you never have that advantage. However, like I said, my butt hurt after the first 30 miles. And on the trike, you don't have to deal with that sort of discomfort. You're basically in a lounge chair the whole time. You are working a different set of muscles. So I think there's give and take, right? 50-50. There's some advantage. On a trike, you move a whole lot slower. Especially when you're flat or going uphill. And on an upright bike, you can move a little bit faster. So there's some fun in that. But I'd say it's fairly 50-50. Maybe the upright has overall a little more advantage because you can finish a bit faster. But there's just differences, I guess.
Yeah, so this seems like you to have more challenges on a trike. So that makes your completed rate even more impressive.
Thank you. I'll take that.
Yeah, I know it's easy to say because I've never been in a trike and stuff, but I just feel like if you put like an iPad and like a Netflix episode, all you have to do is just put yourself going forward and just pedal for half an hour.
Pretty much. I mean, I'll be honest with you. And you can go back and watch the video. But I'm pretty sure Kyle never sweat on the race. Like I don't know. I could be wrong, but I feel like he was just cruising the entire time.
Zero effort.
Yeah, like you're like I think like one thing when you're on a bike is that you're kind of having to balance yourself. If you're going faster, it's easier to balance yourself. But if you want to try, you can just kind of like, oh, look at the stars today.
Yeah,
It's so beautiful.
you can take your eyes off the road without any issue.
Yeah, if you're going uphill and real slow, you can stop and take a break for a second and then just keep going, So yeah.
Since being in a trek in the last few years, I've also noticed how much easier it is to take a selfie without stopping or without slowing down even.
There you go. That's an advantage right there.
Yeah.
But just thinking of it now, what happened, like, if you're going uphill, what happened if you can't do the hill and, like, if you're on a bike, you can just, like, hop off the bike and walk. Like, what do you gotta do? You just start going backwards and it's like, oh shit.
That's a good point.
Well, I mean, first you grab your brakes and you don't have to go backwards, and then I think you just gather yourself and give it another shot. And crank it down, gear way down, and just spin, and
if the hill is steep, we're going slow. Even now, like Kyle said, if I'm on a steep terrain, it's one crank and brake, one more crank and brake again, and just hold that position until your legs can bust out another half a spin.
I mean, like I said it before, again, I think it's extremely impressive that you're disabled and on a trike and you're still able to achieve it. I don't think many will fully understand.
Thank you.
I give you huge props for that.
Man, I appreciate that. And I've always, I think I found this sense of encouragement in that, even without people saying it like you just did, because I recognize that there are things I've done that many able-bodied people wouldn't even think about doing. So there's even that, to me, is motivating, saying, it encourages me to keep waking up and doing things that are seemingly impossible simply because deep down there's
like another
perspective somewhere.
Or another perspective is that sometimes you don't even think about yourself doing all these amazing things. You're just like, it's just a normal day in my life. But then when someone tells you, like, you're doing a great job, then you sit back and wow, like, wow, yeah, that is really impressive.
No, I was just riding my bike. What are you talking about?
Yeah, but like, and then when you put all the challenges together, you're like, wow, like I really did something a little bit extra that a regular person would never do, and I still did it, and it's like, that's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah, and one thing I think about sometimes when I'm being really full of myself is, we both have disabilities. We rode our bikes across the country. All right, fine, I was on a trike, but we still rode. We powered ourselves across the country. Who's disabled now? Like, is it the guy that's sitting on the couch because he can't motivate himself to get up and do anything? Or is it the disabled person, quote, disabled person that rides their bike across country? Like, what is disability now, right?
I know. I mean, there could be those guys who be like, how hard is that? You just lied in a chair and just pedaled? Like, come on, like, come on, man. Like, that's easy peasy.
Yeah, no, I actually I compare myself to the guy on the couch sometimes because I'm just lying there on that trike. So,
so before I take a mic away from you guys, is there anything you want to add or promote? Any words of wisdom? Anything you like? The mic is yours.
Ooh, thank you. That's the open floor is always nerve-wracking.
Sorry, guys.
Promote wise, yeah. No, I think you mentioned it. Our podcast, movie, we'd love to connect with people of all walks of life, wherever in the world they might be. But I think if I were to share words of wisdom, I don't know if you can call it wisdom, but I would encourage folks to find things they can do. I've yet to meet somebody that is to a point of so quote unquote disabled that they can't do anything. Even in hearing a bit of your story and what people are up against with your condition, they might be stuck in bed. but maybe they can do something in the digital world. We've had on our show people that don't have any limbs, no arms, no legs, but they're still getting a lot done. And I always find encouragement in that. No matter what the circumstance is in somebody's life, there's always a way to prove yourself, or always a way to still accomplish things that you've set your mind to. So for whatever that's worth, whoever's listening and watching you do your thing, I hope that they're able to define something or identify something that allows them to still make an impact.
Okay, and Kyle?
I agree with that.
Okay. Okay, I did want to ask one more question. Do you guys ever go, like, let's say you have to go somewhere and it's like you look at plane ticket and you go, you know what, we're just gonna bike there this time.
Not me. I'm happy that I'd get in the car and get there faster.
One of the things I love about cycling is that I can get there on my own. You know, I ride my trike to work sometimes. It's 14 miles and I leave at, 6:30, 7 a.m. to get there. And it's just such an amazing feeling to be like, holy cow, I'm at work right now and I just did this under my own power. Or, going out for coffee with a friend or getting lunch or whatever it is, to get there under my own power, I think is really an amazing feeling.
Of course. So thank you guys for coming on the podcast. Thank you everyone for listening and watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
Thanks, Joe.